The ceiling above me was an ornate, breathtaking fresco of angels weeping. It was very on brand for my current situation, considering I had just woken up in the body of Evangeline St. Clair, the undisputed queen of tragic fictional deaths. I knew the novel Tears of the Winter rose inside and out. It was a miserable tear-jerking saga where Evangeline, fragile, innocent and perpetually victimized, spends her life being ignored by her fiancé, the icy Duke Arthur. According to the original plot, her quiet suffering culminates in a beautifully poetic death from crystal lung disease, a fictional illness that essentially makes you cough up glittering dust until you expire in a tragically aesthetic manner. Only after they lower her into the ground does Arthur realize she was the love of his life, spending the next 60 chapters brooding at her grave and destroying his enemies in her name. Absolutely not. I blinked against the dim, moody lighting of my lavish bedroom. A lacy handkerchief rested in my pale, trembling hand, already dusted with the faint shimmer of my impending doom. "My lady," whispered my tearful maid, Clara, hovering by the bedside like a mourning dove. "The doctor says you must rest. The end. It approaches like a winter frost." I sat up. My joints popped like bubble wrap, but I ignored the phantom weakness clinging to this body. "Clara," I croaked, my throat dry. "Forget the winter frost. Go to the kitchen and bring me a roasted chicken. And a loaf of bread. Actually, bring the whole butter churn too." Clara gasped, dropping a silver basin. But my lady, your delicate constitution. You haven't eaten solid food in days." "Which is exactly why I'm dying, Clara. I'm malnourished, not cursed." I threw off the heavy velvet duvet, my bare feet hitting the cold marble floor. I swayed slightly, the aesthetic frailty of this body fighting my iron will. I grabbed a nearby heavy brass candlestick and used it as a makeshift walking stick. Just then the heavy oak doors swung open. In strode Duke Arthur, looking every bit the aloof, sculpted ice prince he was written to be. He was here for the obligatory staring coldly at his dying fiancée scene. His piercing blue eyes landed on me, expecting a weeping willow. Instead, he found me standing in a rumpled nightgown, gripping a candlestick like a club, looking feral. "Evangeline," he said, his voice a smooth, uncaring drawl. "You should be in bed. And you should be in therapy, Arthur, but here we are." I snapped, shocking both him and myself. "Listen closely. I am not dying today. I am not dying tomorrow. I am going to live to be 102, and I'm going to do it out of pure spite. Now get out of my way, I need to go do some squats." Arthur blinked, his perfectly calculated stoicism fracturing. For the first time in the history of this miserable novel, the male lead looked completely and utterly terrified of me. Good. Let the survival games begin. Chapter 1. Dr. Eris was a man who believed deeply in the healing power of making his patients utterly miserable. He stood at the foot of my lavish velvet-draped bed, holding a glass jar of aggressively squirming leeches with the solemn reverence of a priest holding a holy relic. "The melancholic vapors have settled deep in your chest, Lady Evangeline," he intoned gravely, adjusting his spectacles. "We must purge the sluggish humors. A dozen leeches along the collarbone should draw out the crystal lung disease, provided you continue your regimen of fasting and drinking only lukewarm lemon water." I stared at him from my mound of silk pillows. According to the novel's lore, Evangeline had submitted to this medieval torture with a brave, tragic smile, fading away beautifully while starving to death. "Dr. Eris," I said, my voice raspy but firm, "let me ask you a logical question. If my lungs are supposedly turning to crystal, how is draining my blood and starving me going to fix that? Am I trying to heal? Or am I marinating myself to be an appetizer for those oversized earthworms?" Dr. Eris gasped, clutching the leech jar to his chest. "My lady, the medical texts. The medical texts were written by men who probably died of the common cold," I interrupted, tossing the heavy duvet aside and planting my feet on the floor. "You're fired. Take your vampires and get out of my room." Fired," he sputtered. "But the Duke. The Duke isn't the one coughing up glitter," I snapped, pointing a trembling but determined finger toward the heavy oak doors. "Out! And send the head chef up here immediately." 10 minutes later, Dr. Eris had fled the estate in a state of professional shock, and Chef Pierre stood in my bedroom, twisting his pristine white apron between his hands. He looked terrified. Usually, his interactions with the future Duchess involved her crying over a bowl of broth and sending it back untouched. "Pierre," I said, leaning heavily against the mahogany bedpost to stay upright. I need beef stew. I want it thick, I want it packed with potatoes, and I want enough of it to feed a small army. Beef stew, my lady? Pierre stammered. But your delicate digestion. My digestion is delicate because it has nothing to digest, Pierre. I am carb loading. I am going to eat my way out of this grave. I clapped my hands together, a burst of manic energy fueling me. Bring me 3 servings. Oh, and Pierre? Send a footman to the stables and have them bring up 2 large, evenly weighted sacks of horse feed. Pierre blinked. Horse feed? For consumption. For lifting, I corrected. Now go. Across the sprawling estate, in a study practically dripping with dark, brooding mahogany, Duke Arthur of House Valerius sat behind his desk. He looked like a masterpiece carved from ice-sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and an expression of perpetual beautiful indifference. He was currently reviewing tax reports, waiting for the inevitable daily update on his fiancée's tragic decline. It was an arrangement of duty, of course. He felt a detached pity for Evangeline, but she was simply a fragile porcelain doll destined to shatter before the winter ended. His personal aide Renard entered the study. Strangely, Renard did not look appropriately solemn. He looked deeply fundamentally disturbed. Report, Arthur commanded without looking up from his parchment. How is Lady Evangeline's condition? Has she wept today? Is the doctor keeping her comfortable? Renard cleared his throat. It sounded like a dry heave. Your Grace, Dr. Eris has been dismissed. Forcefully. Arthur's quill paused. He looked up, a perfectly sculpted eyebrow arching. Dismissed? Did she finally lack the strength to endure the treatments? No, Your Grace. She called him Renard consulted a small notepad. A quack who marinates appetizers. Then she ordered him out. Arthur set the quill down. The Ice Prince facade cracked just a fraction. And what is she doing now? Well, sir. Renard swallowed hard. She ordered Chef Pierre to make a massive cauldron of peasant beef stew. She has currently consumed 3 bowls of it. Arthur stared. Evangeline hadn't eaten solid food in a month. 3 bowls? Will she not be ill? She seems quite energized, Your Grace. In fact. Renard hesitated, looking as though he might be hallucinating the words he was about to speak. She had 2 heavy sacks of grain brought to her chambers. She is currently hoisting them onto her shoulders and bending her knees repeatedly, yelling at her maid about maximizing glut activation and spiting the narrative. Silence descended upon the study. It was thick, heavy, and utterly baffled. She is lifting grain? Arthur repeated, the words tasting foreign on his aristocratic tongue. Yes, Your Grace. And sweating. Profusely. Arthur leaned back in his leather chair, staring blankly at the wall. The fragile, weeping willow of a woman he was supposed to gently mourn was currently squatting livestock feed and eating her weight in root vegetables. For the first time in his meticulously planned, emotionally guarded life, Duke Arthur had absolutely no idea what to do next. But as a strange, highly inappropriate spark of curiosity ignited in his chest, he realized one thing for certain. He suddenly really wanted to go watch her. Chapter 2. By day 3 of my transmigration, my glutes were screaming, my resting heart rate was fantastic, and I was exactly on schedule to be murdered. According to the tragic timeline of Tears of the Winter Rose, Chapter 4 featured a heart-wrenching scene where Evangeline's political rivals, impatient with her slow, glittering demise, bribe a servant to poison her chamomile tea. It was supposed to be a catalyst for her deteriorating health, leading to a beautifully illustrated, tear-soaked coughing fit in Duke Arthur's arms. I was sitting at my vanity, dressed in what I had forced the horrified estate seamstress to create. A pair of linen trousers and a tunic that closely resembled ancient sweatpants. I was wrapping my knuckles with strips of silk ribbon when a knock sounded at the door. Enter, I called out, doing a quick calf stretch. A footman I didn't recognize stepped into the room. He was tall, suspiciously muscular for a guy whose job was carrying teacups, and had a scar running through his left eyebrow. He carried a silver tray holding a single porcelain cup of steaming tea. Your afternoon chamomile, my lady, he murmured, keeping his eyes respectfully lowered. I walked over and peered into the cup. The liquid had a faint iridescent sheen to it, and it smelled distinctly like bitter almonds and impending doom. Classic nightshade powder. 0 points for originality. What's your name? I asked, leaning against the vanity. Silas, my lady. Well, Silas, I said, crossing my arms. I'll cut right to the chase. I know this is poisoned. You know this is poisoned. I know my evil step-cousin or whoever sent you. So, let's skip the part where I drink this and die, and move straight to the performance review. How much are they paying you? Silas froze. His hand crept toward the dagger hidden in his boot. I don't know what you mean, my lady. I am but a humble servant. Silas, drop the act. Your posture is strictly military and your tea smells like a cyanide factory. I sighed. Look, being a disposable henchman is a terrible career path. The mortality rate is abysmal. What are your benefits like? Do you have a dental plan? Paid time off? A 401k? Silas blinked, his hand pausing halfway to his boot. A 40 what? Retirement fund, Silas. Are you a contractor or a salaried employee? I was paid 50 gold coins up front, he stammered, entirely derailed by the corporate interrogation. Another 50 upon confirmation of your demise. A flat fee. Tragic. And if you get caught, which you will, because Duke Arthur has a dungeon equipped with thumbscrews, who takes care of your family? No one. You're entirely uninsured. I shook my head in disappointment. I have a counteroffer. Silas stared at me as if I had suddenly grown a second head. You want to counteroffer your own assassination? I need a personal trainer, I explained, gesturing to my wrapped knuckles. A sparring partner. Someone to teach me how to duck, roll, and punch a political rival in the throat. I'll pay you 200 gold coins a year. You get weekends off, access to the estate kitchen, and full dental. And most importantly, I won't tell Duke Arthur you just tried to murder me. Do we have a deal? For a long moment, the trained killer stood in the middle of my bedroom, weighing the pros and cons of assassinating a frail noblewoman versus taking a steady government job with perks. I prefer Sundays and Mondays off, Silas negotiated slowly. Done. Grab those focus mitts off the bed and let's go over my jab-cross combo. Half an hour later, the heavy oak doors of my chamber swung open without a knock. Duke Arthur strode in, looking exquisitely tailored and deeply annoyed. Having spent the last 2 days plagued by reports of his dying fiancée eating entire hams and demanding heavier furniture to push around, he had finally come to investigate the madness himself. Evangeline, Arthur began, his icy voice echoing in the room. I demand to know what is going on in. He stopped dead. The scene before him was not the melancholic sickbed he had anticipated. The velvet curtains were tied back to let in the sun. The Persian rugs had been rolled up to clear the floor. And his fragile doomed white moonlight was currently dodging a left hook from a notoriously lethal underworld assassin, wearing what appeared to be peasant trousers. Keep your guard up, my lady. You're dropping your right hand. Silas barked, holding up padded leather pillows. I'm trying, Silas, but my upper body strength is currently tragic. I yelled back, throwing a surprisingly vicious left jab that smacked into the leather with a satisfying thwack. I paused, noticing the incredibly handsome, incredibly frozen man staring at us from the doorway. Arthur's mouth was slightly parted. His eyes darted from my sweaty, flushed face to the assassin holding the focus mitts. Oh, hey Arthur, I panted, wiping sweat from my forehead with a lace handkerchief. Don't mind us. Silas was just sent here to poison me, but I beat his current salary package, so he's running my cardio circuits now. Arthur stood there in absolute, earth-shattering silence. The meticulously constructed, brooding narrative of his life was actively collapsing before his eyes, replaced by a sweaty woman who treated assassins like freelance fitness instructors. He looked at me. He looked at Silas. Ensure she stays hydrated, Arthur finally said to the assassin, his voice completely hollow. He turned sharply on his heel and walked out, gently closing the door behind him. Chapter 3. The Rose Pavilion was exactly the kind of setting designed for a melodramatic death scene. It featured weeping willows, a picturesque koi pond, and enough white marble to build a mausoleum. In the original novel, Chapter 6 involved Evangeline sitting on a stone bench here, coughing a single glittering speck of blood onto a white rose while Arthur watched from a distance, looking emotionally constipated. I, however, was currently using the stone bench for box jumps. 3, 2, 1 up, I muttered to myself, leaping onto the marble and sticking the landing. I was wearing another set of my scandalous sweat tunics, my hair tied back in a messy knot that Clara the maid had wept over for 20 minutes. I was so focused on my vertical leap that I didn't hear the crunch of expensive leather boots on gravel until it was too late. Evangeline. I mid-jumped, startled, and landed half on, half off the bench, flailing my arms like a windmill before managing to stay upright. I turned to see Duke Arthur standing at the entrance of the pavilion. He looked immaculate, dressed in a navy blue riding habit that clung to his broad shoulders in a way that frankly made me want to do more squats. He had come to fulfill his narrative quota of emotional neglect. He was supposed to stare at me coldly, offer a few cutting words about my fragility, and leave me to weep into the koi pond. "Arthur," I said, catching my breath and wiping my brow. "What a pleasant surprise. Are you here for the cardio circuit? I've got a spare jump rope." Arthur's jaw tightened. He looked at the stone bench, then at my muddy boots, then back to my face. "I came to check on your condition. I was informed you were resting in the gardens." "Active recovery," I corrected. "Rest is for the dead, and I've firmly decided to cancel my subscription to mortality." He opened his mouth, likely to deliver a scathingly icy remark, when a flash of orange suddenly darted out from the rose bushes. It was a stray cat, a scruffy feral-looking ginger menace with half a tail. It tore across the pavilion, carrying what looked suspiciously like Chef Pierre's prized resting duck breast in its mouth. Now normal dying heroines do not care about stray cats or stolen poultry. But I had spent the last 3 days doing agility drills with Silas, and my fast twitch muscle fibers were begging for a real-world test. "I've got him!" I yelled, abandoning my workout entirely. I bolted. The cat zigzagged. I zigged. The cat zagged. It made a desperate leap toward the marble walkway directly in front of Arthur. I didn't think. I just saw the target, calculated the trajectory, and launched myself into a textbook flying tackle. Unfortunately, my calculations failed to account for Arthur's incredibly broad, incredibly solid chest standing directly in my flight path. I hit him like a human cannonball. Arthur let out a very un-Duke-like "oof" as my momentum carried us both backward. For a second we were airborne, a tangle of limbs, expensive navy wool, and sheer panic. Then gravity intervened. We hit the decorative koi pond with a spectacular booming splash. Freezing water surged over my head. I came up sputtering, violently spitting out lily pad remnants. "I missed the cat," I gasped, wiping pond scum from my eyes. I looked over. Arthur was sitting in waist-deep water. His perfect hair was plastered to his forehead. A single, very confused orange koi fish was flapping weakly against his lapel. The icy, untouchable Duke of Valerius looked completely and utterly ridiculous. I froze, bracing myself for the impending explosion. According to his character profile, Arthur was a man of pristine dignity. He was going to execute me. I was going to be the first heroine to die of treason by pond. Arthur stared down at the fish on his chest. Then he looked at me, sitting in the mud with a lily pad on my head. His shoulders began to shake. I flinched, waiting for the screaming. But instead of a roar of fury, a strange, rough sound escaped his lips. It was deep, breathless, and totally unfamiliar. Duke Arthur was laughing. It wasn't a polite chuckle either. It was a full-blown, chest-heaving laugh that completely shattered his icy facade, transforming his face into something devastatingly warm and alarmingly handsome. He laughed until he had to lean back against the stone edge of the pond, splashing more water onto his ruined clothes. "You!" he managed to choke out, pointing a dripping finger at me. "You are completely insane." "I prefer proactively surviving," I grumbled, though I couldn't stop a grin from breaking across my own face. "And for the record, your pond needs to be cleaned. It tastes like algae." Arthur wiped a tear of mirth from his eye, looking at me with an expression that had absolutely nothing to do with pity, neglect, or tragic duty. It was bright, focused, and dangerously interested. "Evangeline," he said softly, the lingering amusement warming his usually freezing gaze. "I do not think you are going to die anytime soon." "That's the plan, Your Grace," I replied, tossing the lily pad back into the water. "Now are you going to help me up? Or are we fishing for our supper?" Chapter 4. Every good melodramatic romance requires a villainous rival. A stunning, scheming noblewoman who exists solely to make the heroine feel inadequate. In Tears of the Winter Rose, that role belonged to Lady Seraphina of House Vance. According to the plot, Chapter 7 was supposed to feature Seraphina visiting my sickbed to coldly inform me that Arthur had accompanied her to the Royal Opera, prompting a devastating coughing fit that would leave me bedridden for a week. I was currently not in a sickbed. I was sitting cross-legged on a very expensive Persian rug in my drawing room, aggressively highlighting portions of the estate's financial ledgers with a charcoal pencil. Silas, my assassin-turned-personal trainer, was in the corner doing one-handed push-ups. The double doors swung open, and in glided Lady Seraphina. She was a vision in crimson silk and dripping with rubies, her hair styled into an intricate gravity-defying masterpiece. She paused, her perfectly painted lips parting in preparation for a scathing, elegant insult. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at Silas. "Evangeline," Seraphina faltered, her perfectly rehearsed sneer slipping. "What? What are you doing on the floor? And who is that terrifying man?" "Core strengthening and accounting," I replied cheerfully, not looking up from the ledger. "And that's Silas. He's taking his union-mandated 15-minute break. What can I do for you, Seraphina?" She recovered admirably, smoothing her skirts and puffing out her chest. She stepped delicately into the room, determined to deliver her lines. "I have come out of pity, Evangeline," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "I know your condition keeps you locked away. I simply thought you should know that Duke Arthur escorted me to the opera last night. We shared a box. He looked exceedingly handsome in the candlelight." She paused, waiting for the tears. She waited for the heartbreak, the tragic gasp, the inevitable glittering cough. "Oh, thank God," I exhaled, tossing my charcoal pencil aside and beaming at her. "He actually went? I told him I'd rather eat a shoe than sit through 4 hours of sopranos wailing in a language I don't speak. You're a lifesaver, Sarah." Seraphina blinked. "I what?" I said. "He was with me." "Yes, and I appreciate it. Taking one for the team," I said, scrambling up from the floor and wiping charcoal dust on my linen trousers. I hurried over to my mahogany desk and began rummaging through the drawers. "Actually, your timing is impeccable. I've been meaning to send a courier to your estate." "To curse my name?" she asked, looking slightly hopeful. "To offer a transfer of assets," I corrected, pulling out a large roll of parchment and a freshly inked quill. I slammed them down on the desk. "Come here. Let's talk logistics." Seraphina took a cautious step forward, eyeing me as if I might bite her. "Logistics of what?" "The Duke," I said plainly. "Listen, I'm currently booked solid trying to outrun a predetermined tragic fate, and I simply do not have the bandwidth for a brooding, emotionally unavailable fiancé. If you want him, you can have him. But we need to make it official." I unrolled the parchment. It was a dense, highly detailed contract I had drafted late last night. "I'm willing to sign over all fiancé rights and privileges immediately," I explained, tapping the parchment with the feather of the quill. "However, if you take the Duke, you take the whole package. Section 3, Clause B. You are legally obligated to manage his mood swings and his dramatic staring out of window sessions. Section 4 clearly outlines that you are now responsible for pretending to care about his provincial tax reforms." Seraphina stared at the contract. The color was rapidly draining from her face. You are offering to give away the Duke of Valerius? Like a used carriage." "I'm offering a strategic merger," I corrected. "But there is a catch. You also have to take over his laundry detail. Ever since I tackled him into the koi pond, his valet has been complaining about algae stains on his wool riding habits. You'll need to sign here, an initial at the bottom acknowledging that you accept him as is without warranty." I held out the quill to her with a bright customer service smile. Seraphina looked from the quill to the contract to me. Her eyes were wide with genuine, unadulterated horror. The sickly, pathetic rival she had planned to bully was currently trying to saddle her with administrative duties and laundry. "You have lost your mind," she whispered, taking a step back. "The disease has eaten your brain." "My brain is in peak condition, Sarah. It's just properly caffeinated," I insisted, shaking the quill. "Come on, it's a great deal. I'll even throw in his collection of painfully tight cravats." "Keep away from me," Seraphina shrieked. Abandoning every ounce of high society grace, she turned and sprinted out of the drawing room, her heavy silk skirts swishing frantically as she fled down the hallway. I sighed, dropping the quill and rolling up the parchment. Well, that was a missed opportunity. From the corner of the room, Silas switched to his left arm and grunted. "Your negotiation tactics are too aggressive, my lady. You should have offered dental." "Noted for next time, Silas," I said, returning to my spot on the rug. "Noted for next time." Chapter 5. The Grand Solstice Ball was the social event of the season, and historically Chapter 9 of the novel. It was infamous among fans of Tears of the Winter Rose as the swoon scene. Evangeline was supposed to wear a dress so tight she could barely breathe, waltz with Arthur, and delicately collapse into his strong, uncaring arms, proving once and for all that she was too fragile for this world. I had heavily revised the wardrobe plan. My gown was still a breathtaking cascade of midnight blue silk and silver embroidery, but I had forced the royal tailors to make 3 critical, non-negotiable modifications. Hidden gussets. Extra fabric panels discreetly sewn into the armpits to allow for a full range of shoulder motion. The anti-corset. The bodice was structured with flexible boning, laced loosely enough to allow for deep, diaphragmatic breathing. Tactical footwear. Beneath the sweeping hem, I wore sensible flat-soled leather combat boots. I stood near the refreshment table, comfortably sipping a non-poison glass of sparkling cider. Across the ballroom, the royal guards were off-duty and congregated in a boisterous circle, drinking ale and loudly debating physical fitness. "I'm telling you, it's all in the chest and triceps," boasted Captain Thorne, a man built like a brick tavern. "I did 50 consecutive push-ups this morning in full-plate armor. No man in this room can best that stamina." "And what about the women?" I asked, appearing at his elbow. Thorne looked down at me, taking in my delicate features and glittering jewels. He chuckled, a deep, patronizing rumble. "My Lady Evangeline, I assure you, standard military conditioning is quite beyond the delicate constitution of a noblewoman. We wouldn't want you to strain a wrist lifting your teacup." I handed my cider to a passing footman. "Captain Thorne, I am currently surviving a terminal illness purely out of spite. I am fueled by beef stew and sheer defiance. 50 push-ups is a warm-up." The circle of guards fell silent. Thorne smirked. "Are you making a wager, my lady?" "I am," I said, lifting my chin. "If you win, I will personally double the guard's meat ration for the month. If I win, you and your men have to clean out the Duke's stables tomorrow morning. Manure duty." Thorne grinned confidently. "You have a deal, your ladyship." Within 3 minutes, a massive crowd had formed. High society lords and ladies gasped behind their feathered fans as I unceremoniously hiked up the front of my midnight blue skirt, tucked it into my belt, and dropped into a flawless military-grade plank position on the polished marble floor. Silas, who was attending as my bodyguard, was already circulating through the crowd taking cash bets. "Down!" called the referee, a highly amused lieutenant. Thorne and I lowered ourselves. "Up. 1. Pushed up. My form was immaculate. "Thank you, Silas." "Down. Up. 2. By the time we hit 30, Thorne was sweating profusely. His face was the color of a ripe tomato. I, however, was in the zone. My breathing was steady, the hidden armpit gussets of my dress performing beautifully. Meanwhile, Duke Arthur had just arrived. He stepped into the ballroom expecting a boring evening of political posturing and avoiding his fiancée. Instead, he found the dance floor entirely abandoned. The entire aristocracy of the kingdom was huddled in a massive circle near the punch bowl, screaming. His heart dropped. "Evangeline!" He shoved his way through the throngs of dukes and duchesses, panic seizing his throat. She had collapsed. The disease had finally taken her. He mentally prepared himself to find her pale, tragic form on the ground. He broke through the inner circle and froze. Evangeline was indeed on the floor. But she wasn't dying. She was on push-up number 47. 48! The crowd roared in unison. Arthur stared. Her cheeks were flushed with vibrant, healthy color. Her shoulders flexed under the midnight silk. She looked fierce, feral, and absolutely radiant. Next to her, Captain Thorne gave a strangled groan and collapsed onto the marble, defeated. 50! Evangeline shouted, pushing up one last time before elegantly popping to her feet. She wasn't even breathing that hard. She brushed a speck of dust off her bodice and offered a hand to the groaning captain of the guard. "Stables. Tomorrow at dawn, Thorne. I want those stalls shining." The crowd erupted into stunned, chaotic applause. Arthur stood perfectly still, the noise of the ballroom fading into a dull buzz. He looked at the woman who had upended his household, terrified his servants, hired an assassin, and just publicly humiliated his finest soldier. His chest felt uncomfortably tight, but it had nothing to do with panic. It was a sudden, violent realization. The icy, untouchable Duke of Valerius looked at his unhinged, carb-loading fiancée and realized with absolute, terrifying certainty. He was head over heels in love with a woman who could probably bench press him. Evangeline caught his eye through the crowd. She grinned, a bright, triumphant smile that hit him like a physical blow, and gave him a cheerful two-finger salute. Arthur didn't scold her. He didn't demand decorum. He simply walked through the crowd, stopped in front of her and bowed. "My lady," Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave, completely devoid of its usual frost. "Would you do me the honor of this dance? Or are your arms too tired?" "Arthur," I beamed, adjusting my skirt. "I could dance with you all night and still have enough energy to carry you home." And the terrifying part was Arthur genuinely hoped she would. Chapter 6. In any self-respecting melodrama, Chapter 10 is reserved for the abduction. The heroine is inevitably snatched while picking wildflowers, thrown over the back of a horse, and locked in a damp cave where she weeps until the male lead slaughters a small army to retrieve her. The villainous faction opposing Duke Arthur had clearly read the handbook. Unfortunately for them, they executed their master plan on a Sunday. As stipulated in his employment contract, my personal trainer/assassin, Silas, had Sundays off. Therefore, I was alone in the outer gardens, engaged in a brisk session of rucking, marching with a backpack full of encyclopedias to build endurance, when a burlap sack was unceremoniously shoved over my head. 3 hours and a very bumpy carriage ride later, the sack was yanked off. I blinked against the dim light of a cavernous, dilapidated hideout. My wrists were bound with coarse rope, and I was surrounded by a dozen heavily armed, remarkably filthy men. Standing before me was their leader, a mountain of a man missing an eye and half of his teeth. "Welcome to your new home, Lady Evangeline," he growled, leaning in close. His breath smelled strongly of cheap ale and scurvy. "I am Garrick the Bloody. We've sent a ransom note to your precious Duke. If he doesn't surrender his northern territories, you'll be staying in this rat hole indefinitely." He waited for me to tremble. He waited for the tears. I wiggled my fingers, testing the tension of the knot. "Garrick, was it?" "Garrick, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. As a kidnapping, this is a solid C-," I said, eyeing the state of the cavern. "First of all, this rope is tied using a standard slip knot. I could get out of this in 4 seconds, but frankly my shoulders need the static stretch. Secondly, and more importantly, what is happening over there?" I pointed my bound hands toward the back of the cave. Garrick blinked his one good eye, confused. "That's the cooking fire. And next to it? The latrine buckets." "Garrick," I sighed, channeling the deep, weary disappointment of a seasoned health inspector. "You have your biological waste station 3 feet from your food preparation zone. Furthermore, the cavern has zero cross-ventilation. You aren't running a criminal syndicate, you're incubating cholera. Untie me immediately." "I what? No, you're the hostage," Garrick sputtered, trying to regain control of the room. "I am a hostage with allegedly compromised lungs who refuses to die of dysentery before Chapter 15. I snapped, the sheer volume of my voice making 2 of the nearest bandits flinch. "Untie me. We are instituting a chore wheel, we are relocating the latrines downwind, and someone is going to boil a massive pot of water right now because we are scrubbing everything." 2 days later, Duke Arthur of House Valerius was a man possessed. When the ransom note arrived, the icy stoicism he was famous for shattered completely, replaced by a dark, murderous, world-ending rage. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. He had simply strapped on his broadsword, mobilized his most lethal knights, and tracked the bandits to their mountain hideout. He approached the cavern entrance with his sword drawn, his eyes practically glowing with lethal intent. He was ready to sever limbs. He was ready to bathe the mountain in blood to get his Evangeline back. With a mighty kick, Arthur shattered the reinforced wooden barricade blocking the cave. "Unhand her, you filth!" Arthur roared, his voice echoing like thunder. He burst into the cavern, broadsword raised, expecting a scene of terror and suffering. Instead, he found Evangeline standing on a wooden crate in the center of the room, holding a long stick like a pointer. She was pointing at a massive piece of parchment pinned to the wall, which featured a meticulously drawn grid. "For the last time, pest control and latrine duty cannot be done by the same person on the same day," she was saying firmly. "It's a cross-contamination nightmare. Todd, you're on latrines. Garrick, you're on pest control." The terrifying, bloodthirsty bandits were sitting in a neat semicircle on the floor, looking completely demoralized. Garrick the Bloody raised a timid hand. "Yes, Garrick," Evangeline asked. "Can I trade pest control for dishwashing? The sand makes my hands dry." "Only if you can find someone to cover your shift," she replied smoothly. Arthur lowered his broadsword slowly. The tip clattered against the stone floor. "Evangeline?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. Every head in the cavern snapped toward the entrance. When the bandits saw the Duke, they didn't draw their weapons. They didn't threaten the hostage. Instead, a collective, profound gasp of relief swept through the criminal syndicate. Garrick the Bloody scrambled to his feet, sprinted across the cave, and practically threw himself at Arthur's boots. "Your Grace! Thank the gods!" the bandit leader sobbed, clutching Arthur's pristine trousers. "Take her back. Please, we beg of you. She made us scrub the cauldrons with boiling water. She confiscated our daggers because they weren't sanitized. She forces us to do deep breathing exercises at dawn." Arthur stared down at the weeping bandit, then looked up at his fiancée. Evangeline hopped down from her crate, dusting off her hands. "Arthur, you got the note. Good timing, I was just about to audit their inventory. Did you know they've been stockpiling stolen grain but letting it mold due to improper moisture control? It's an economic tragedy." Arthur sheathed his sword. The murderous rage that had propelled him up the mountain dissolved entirely, replaced by a profound, overwhelming rush of affection. He walked past the weeping bandits, stepped right up to Evangeline, and grabbed her by the waist. "You," he murmured, his voice thick with a mixture of disbelief and utter adoration, "are an absolute menace." "I prefer managerially gifted," I corrected, wrapping my arms around his neck. Arthur didn't argue. He just leaned down and kissed me, right there in the middle of the hyper-sanitized bandit camp, while Garrick the Bloody cried tears of joy in the background. Chapter 7. Surviving a kidnapping and subsequently returning to the estate with a reformed bandit escort, who politely carried my weighted rucksack down the mountain, had apparently triggered a severe regression in Arthur's character development. The icy, brooding male lead had returned. I was summoned to his study the following evening. I arrived wearing my finest post-workout linen, sipping a protein shake made from raw eggs, milk, and a staggering amount of crushed almonds. Arthur was standing by the fireplace, staring into the flames with his hands clasped behind his back. He looked devastatingly handsome and utterly miserable. "Evangeline," he began, not turning around. It was his classic, "I am about to say something painfully stoic" voice. "Please sit." "I'd rather stand." "Leg day," I explained, taking a loud slurp of my shake. He finally turned, his blue eyes heavy with a dark, tormented shadow. He walked over to his massive mahogany desk and pushed a heavy parchment scroll toward me. The wax seal of House Valerius was stamped at the bottom. "I have drafted the necessary legal documents to dissolve our engagement," Arthur said, his voice flat. "Your dowry will be returned in full, along with a sizable estate in the southern countryside. You will be safe there, far from my enemies, far from me." I stared at the parchment. Then I stared at him. "Are you breaking up with me because I unionized your kidnappers?" "I am breaking up with you to save your life," Arthur snapped, his icy facade cracking instantly. He slammed a hand on the desk. "Do you not understand? Garrick and his men were hired by the Northern Lords. Next time it might not be a disorganized band of thugs. They targeted you because you are my weakness, Evangeline. I will not have your blood on my hands." Ah, the noble idiot trope. It was right on schedule. I set my protein shake down on a stack of highly important tax documents. "Arthur, let me explain the reality of this situation to you. Do you know how much a custom-forged, reinforced iron squat rack costs? Because the blacksmith in the courtyard is currently building me one, and it is astronomical." Arthur blinked, thoroughly derailed. "Oh, what?" "Furthermore," I continued, crossing my arms, "the sheer volume of beef, poultry, and imported almonds I consume daily to maintain this muscle mass requires the logistical and financial backing of a dukedom. If I go to the countryside, who is going to fund my macronutrients? Am I supposed to hunt my own boars?" "You are missing the point," Arthur shouted, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, ruining it entirely. "I am trying to protect you from the grave. And I am telling you that I am already outrunning the grave, and I am not doing it on a peasant's budget." I yelled back, stepping right up to him. "You don't get to push me away just because you're scared." "Yes, I am scared," he roared, suddenly closing the distance between us. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight and desperate. The stoic Duke was gone. In his place was a man unraveling at the seams. When I saw that empty garden, Evangeline, when I thought I had lost you before I even truly knew you, it tore me apart. You are chaotic, you are terrifying, and you are the only bright thing in my miserable life. I cannot let you die. Then stop trying to fire me from the position of your fiancé. I shouted, glaring up at him. I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here, I'm marrying you, and we're going to live long enough to become a menace to our grandchildren. Now void this ridiculous contract. Arthur stared down at me, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He looked from my stubborn, flushed face to the annulment paper sitting on the desk. With a frustrated, feral growl, Arthur swept his arm across the mahogany, sending the legal documents, the inkwell, and a decorative globe crashing to the floor. Before the parchment even hit the rug, his hands were in my hair. He didn't politely peck me like he had in the bandit camp. He kissed me like a man who was drowning and had finally found a lifeline. It was a messy, desperate, chaotic collision of teeth and lips. I didn't swoon. I didn't faint. I wrapped my arms around his neck, stood on my tiptoes in my sensible boots, and kissed him right back with all the lung capacity my supposedly dying body could muster. When we finally broke apart, we were both gasping for air. Arthur rested his forehead against mine, his hand still gripping my waist as if he expected me to vanish into glittering dust. You, he breathed, a slightly unhinged smile spreading across his face, are going to be the death of me. Nonsense, I replied, smoothing down his rumpled lapels. With the cardio regimen I have planned for us, we're going to live forever. Now pick up your contract. I need to use the back of it to log my workout. Chapter 8. The assassination attempts, I had to admit, were getting shockingly lazy. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and a footman had just delivered a beautifully woven wicker basket to my private sitting room. It was overflowing with pristine ruby-red apples, nestled in decorative straw, with a card that read, "To Lady Evangeline for a swift and peaceful rest." A concerned well-wisher. I stared at the basket. Silas, who was currently doing tricep dips using two sturdy mahogany dining chairs, paused to stare at it too. "Silas," I said, picking up the card with the tips of my fingers. "Professional opinion. What are we looking at here?" Silas wiped his brow with a towel and strolled over. He picked up one of the apples, sniffed it, and held it up to the sunlight. A faint, unnaturally purple sheen caught the light on the skin. "Essence of the nightshade lotus," Silas declared, looking genuinely offended as a craftsman. "It's a paralytic. Shuts down the respiratory system. Highly expensive but incredibly cliché. Applying it topically to fruit? It's sloppy. It taints the skin color. And the card practically says, 'Have a nice death.'" I sighed, tossing the card into the fireplace. They aren't even trying to be subtle anymore. The Northern Lords have clearly exhausted their budget on Garrick's kidnapping fiasco. What shall I do with them, my lady? Incinerator. I looked at the basket, then out the window toward the Outer Bailey. I had been reviewing the estate's agricultural ledgers that morning, and Chef Pierre had lodged a formal complaint about a rather aggressive colony of field rats infiltrating the root cellar. "Actually, Silas," I smiled, picking up the basket, "I believe in recycling." The next morning, the estate was in an uproar. Duke Arthur burst into my dining room while I was halfway through a massive plate of scrambled eggs and spinach. He looked sleep-deprived, his cravat tied haphazardly, and his eyes wild. "Evangeline," he barked, striding across the room and grabbing my shoulders, visually inspecting me for signs of poisoning. "Are you unharmed? The guards just reported a mass casualty event in the root cellar." "Good morning, Arthur." "And yes, I am perfectly fine," I said, chewing comfortably. "Did Pierre find my little gift to the estate?" Arthur dropped his hands, staring at me in bewildered horror. "Your gift?" "Evangeline, the exterminators just hauled out 42 abnormally large rats. They were completely rigid, stiff as boards. The head groundskeeper is currently having a panic attack." "I know. Isn't it fantastic?" I beamed, wiping my mouth with a linen napkin. "Someone sent me a basket of poisoned apples yesterday. I figured, rather than let perfectly good biological warfare go to waste, I'd dice them up and scatter them near the grain stores. Problem solved. You can cancel the order for those expensive iron traps." Arthur slowly sank into the chair beside me. He buried his face in his hands, letting out a long, ragged exhale. "Someone sent poisoned apples to your chambers. A lethal, untraceable toxin made it past my perimeter, into your private sitting room, and your first instinct was to use it for pest control. Efficiency, Arthur. It's the cornerstone of a successful dukedom." He dropped his hands, fixing me with a look of terrifying, obsessive intensity. The icy, emotionally unavailable Duke of Chapter 1 was entirely dead and buried. In his place was a man who looked like he was one minor inconvenience away from declaring martial law. "The perimeter is compromised," he muttered, mostly to himself, his eyes darting toward the door. "The guards are insufficient. If they can send fruit, they can send a dagger. They can send a bomb." "Arthur, calm down." Silas checked the perimeter. "I am tripling the guard," he announced, standing up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the stone floor. "No, I am replacing the guard. And I am sealing the east wing." Before I could point out that sealing the east wing would severely restrict my access to the courtyard squat rack, he was gone, sweeping out of the room like an avenging storm. I didn't think much of his paranoia until much later that night. Around 2 a.m. my stomach gave a familiar rumble. Muscle synthesis requires calories, and I was craving a midnight snack. I threw on a heavy velvet robe over my linen nightgown, opened my heavy oak chamber door, and immediately tripped over something massive and solid. I let out a yelp, tumbling forward, but a pair of strong, familiar arms caught me before I hit the floor. "Who goes there?" a harsh, gravelly voice barked. I blinked in the dim light of the hallway sconces. Duke Arthur was sitting on the floor directly outside my bedroom door. He was not wearing a nightshirt. He was wearing full, gleaming steel chest armor, leather bracers, and had his massive custom-forged broadsword unsheathed and resting across his knees. He was perched on a tactical military bedroll. We stared at each other. "Arthur," I whispered, utterly baffled. "What in the world are you doing?" "Standing guard," he replied defensively, holding me steady by my elbows. "Or sitting guard. The stone is quite cold. You are the Duke of Valerius. You have an army. You have Silas. Why are you camping in my hallway looking like you're about to besiege a fortress?" "Because," Arthur said, his jaw setting stubbornly, "an army can be bribed. A guard can fall asleep. But if anyone wants to bring a piece of fruit within 50 feet of this door, they will have to go through me." I looked at his rigid posture, the dark circles under his eyes, and the naked, desperate protectiveness radiating off him. He was completely out of his mind. He was breaking every rule of high society decorum. It was the most romantic thing I had ever seen. I sighed, reaching down to grab the collar of his armor. "Get up. Evangeline, I cannot abandon my post." "I'm not telling you to abandon it, I'm telling you to relocate it," I said, pulling him to his feet. "My bed is large enough for two, the mattress is stuffed with prime goose down, and if an assassin breaks through the window, I expect you to act as a meat shield. Bring the broadsword." Arthur's eyes went wide, the fierce, protective warrior instantly morphing into a violently blushing mess. "My lady, we are unmarried. The propriety." "Arthur, I am wearing sweatpants, and you are acting like a lunatic. Get in the room before I make you do burpees." He didn't argue further. The Duke of Valerius dutifully picked up his bedroll, sheathed his sword, and followed me inside, proving once again that the plot of this novel had officially lost the war. Chapter 9. Chapter 15 of Tears of the Winter Rose was supposed to be my swan song. It was the emotional crescendo of the entire tragic melodrama. According to the original text, Evangeline, driven mad by a fever brought on by her glittering lung disease, wanders out of the estate during a storm. She is pursued to the edge of Dead Man's Drop, a jagged, dramatic cliff overlooking the crashing sea, by the last remaining assassins of the Northern Lords. With nowhere left to run, she gives a tearful, poetic monologue about the cruelty of fate, and throws herself into the churning abyss. Duke Arthur arrives exactly 30 seconds too late, falling to his knees and screaming her name at the sky. I, however, had a slightly different itinerary planned. First of all, I wasn't feverish. I was highly hydrated and vibrating with the energy of a pre-workout tonic Silas had mixed for me. Secondly, I hadn't wandered. I had purposely hiked the 3 miles up to Dead Man's Drop, dragging a massive, canvas-wrapped contraption behind me. Arthur, bless his paranoid heart, had been distracted by a sudden administrative crisis in the East Wing, a crisis I had orchestrated by paying a stable boy to release 3 dozen chickens into the armory. I reached the cliff's edge. The wind was howling, whipping my sturdy canvas trousers and practical woolen sweater. It was perfect updraft weather. I unwrapped my parcel. For the last month, I had mercilessly badgered the Royal Engineers, threatening them with budget cuts until they built me exactly what I wanted. They called it the aerial death trap. I called it a rudimentary hang glider with reinforced bamboo struts and double-stitched canvas. I was just finishing tightening the leather chest harness when the unmistakable sound of booted feet crunching on gravel echoed behind me. I turned. Emerging from the tree line were 6 men clad in head-to-toe black leather, their faces concealed by masks. They held wicked-looking crossbows and curved daggers. "Lady Evangeline," the leader barked, stepping forward. He raised a dramatic, gloved hand. "The cliff is at your back. There is nowhere left to run. The Duke cannot save you now. Your frail, doomed existence ends here against the rocks." I double-checked the carabiner clipping me to the glider's frame. "Are you the replacement team the Northern Lords sent? Because frankly, your uniforms are highly impractical for daytime ops. Black leather in the midday sun? You must be chafing terribly." The leader faltered, his dramatic arm lowering slightly. "Silence. Surrender yourself or jump. Choose your death." "I choose aerodynamics," I corrected cheerfully, gripping the bamboo control bar. I turned my back to them, facing the terrifying churning drop. The sea crashed violently against the jagged rocks hundreds of feet below. It was a plunge guaranteed to kill any tragic heroine. "What is she doing?" one of the assassins muttered nervously. "Is she putting on a backpack?" "Don't let her stall," the leader shouted. "Advance." I took a deep breath, engaged my core, and sprinted straight for the edge of the cliff. "Wait, no. We're supposed to push her," someone yelled behind me. I didn't stop. I hit the edge of the limestone and launched myself into the empty, howling abyss. "See ya, losers," I screamed at the top of my lungs. For one terrifying stomach-dropping second I plummeted. Gravity clawed at me. And then with a violent snap, the canvas caught the massive coastal updraft. My descent halted instantly. The glider swooped upward, banking gracefully to the left as I shifted my weight on the control bar. I soared up, hovering level with the cliff's edge for a brief moment. The 6 highly trained, lethal assassins were standing at the precipice, entirely frozen. One of them had his crossbow lowered, his jaw completely slack beneath his mask. They watched in absolute, mind-bending silence as the frail, sickly noblewoman they were sent to murder casually surfed the wind currents like a giant, heavily armed seagull. "Have a great afternoon," I yelled down to them, banking right and catching a thermal that carried me over the coastal forest. The flight was spectacular. The engineers had truly outdone themselves. I bypassed the treacherous rocks, glided smoothly over the canopy of the pine trees, and aimed for the small village nestled at the bottom of the valley. Specifically, I was aiming for the large, flat thatched roof of the Rusty Boar, a popular local tavern renowned for its smoked meats. I flared the glider perfectly, stalling my momentum just as I cleared the tavern's chimney. My combat boots hit the thatch, sliding for a few feet before I brought myself to a steady, triumphant halt. I unclipped my harness, dusted the straw off my trousers, and climbed down the wooden trellis attached to the tavern wall. I pushed through the swinging wooden doors of the Rusty Boar. The tavern went silent, patrons staring at the future Duchess who had just dropped from the sky. "Good afternoon, everyone," I announced, walking up to the bar and slapping down a silver coin. "I'll have a full rack of ribs, a side of roasted potatoes, and a pint of your darkest ale. I've just beaten my narrative arc, and I am absolutely famished." Chapter 10. The exact timeline of Duke Arthur's meltdown was as follows. Minute 1. Having violently subdued the 3 dozen chickens flapping around the armory, Arthur mounted his warhorse and charged toward Dead Man's Drop. He arrived at the cliff's edge just as the storm clouds rolled in, perfectly cueing the gloomy, dramatic lighting required for a tragic climax. Minute 3. He found the 6 assassins standing dangerously close to the precipice, pointing at the sky and arguing loudly about aerodynamics. Minute 5. Arthur, operating on pure, unadulterated terror, drew his broadsword and bellowed a war cry that rattled the limestone. The assassins, already thoroughly traumatized by my exit, immediately dropped their weapons and surrendered. Minute 7. Arthur grabbed the leader by the leather lapels and demanded to know where I was. When the man pointed to the churning, deadly ocean below and stammered, She stepped off. Arthur's entire world shattered. According to Silas, who arrived on foot shortly after, Arthur performed the mandatory narrative ritual flawlessly. He dropped his sword, fell to his knees in the mud, and let out an agonizing, sky-shattering scream of, "Evangeline!" that echoed over the crashing waves. For the next 110 minutes, Arthur existed in a state of absolute hollow devastation. The white moonlight was gone. He commanded his guards to drag the sea, ignoring the torrential rain that had begun to fall, his icy heart completely and permanently broken. Meanwhile, at the Rusty Boar, I was on my second plate of ribs. The rain was drumming pleasantly against the thatched roof, and the tavern was warm, smelling of wood smoke and roasting meat. I had traded a silver coin for a dry woolen blanket, which I had draped over my shoulders like a cape, and I was deeply invested in picking the meat off a very stubborn bone. The heavy oak doors of the tavern exploded open. They didn't just swing. They hit the interior walls with a crack that silenced the entire room. The barkeep dropped a mug. A bard in the corner abruptly stopped playing his lute. Standing in the doorway was Duke Arthur. He looked like a vengeful god of war who had just crawled out of a watery grave. His pristine armor was smeared with mud. His perfect icy blonde hair was plastered to his skull by the rain. His eyes were red-rimmed, bloodshot, and completely devoid of sanity. He had clearly come to the village to commandeer fishing boats for body recovery efforts. He took a heavy, staggering step into the tavern. I paused, halfway through pulling a piece of pork from the bone. I had a smear of sweet and spicy barbecue sauce on my left cheek. Arthur's wild, dead eyes scanned the room. They swept past the frightened villagers, past the crackling hearth, and landed squarely on the corner table. He stopped. He blinked, rainwater dripping from his eyelashes. I gave him a little wave with the rib bone. Hey, the chicken diversion worked flawlessly, by the way. I had a great tailwind. Arthur didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just stared at me, his chest heaving under his wet armor, his brain violently rebooting as it processed the fact that the tragic ghost he was currently mourning was heavily coated in dry rub. Arthur, I asked, putting the bone down and wiping my hands on a napkin. Are you all right? You look a bit pale. Have you eaten? He moved so fast it was a blur. In 3 massive strides he crossed the tavern. He didn't pull up a chair. He didn't demand an explanation. He just collapsed, his knees hitting the wooden floorboards with a heavy thud directly beside my chair. Before I could even process the movement, his arms wrapped around my waist in a vice-like grip, and he buried his wet face directly into my barbecue sauce-stained woolen blanket. Whoa! I breathed, stiffening in surprise. Arthur, you're soaking wet. He let out a jagged, wretched sound that made my heart physically clench. It wasn't a dignified sniffle. It was a full-body, chest-racking sob. The icy, untouchable Duke of Valerius was weeping on his knees in a public tavern. You stepped off, he choked out, his voice muffled by the blanket, his large frame trembling violently against my side. I looked down at the rocks. I thought. Oh, Arthur. I softened immediately, the pragmatism melting away. I carefully reached out with my sauce-free hand and ran my fingers through his soaked hair. I didn't fall. I flew. I had the engineers build me a glider. You flew, he repeated numbly, lifting his head. His beautiful face was a mess of tears, rain, and raw, unfiltered terror. The walls he had spent his entire life building were entirely pulverized. Evangeline, I cannot survive this. I cannot survive you dying. If you had hit those rocks, I would have thrown myself in after you. I stared down at him. The sheer intensity in his eyes was blinding. This wasn't the brooding obsession of a male lead mourning a plot device. This was a man stripped down to his very soul, begging for the woman he loved. I'm not dying, Arthur, I said fiercely, cupping his cold cheek, smearing a tiny bit of barbecue sauce on his jawline in the process. I didn't care. I told you I am too stubborn to die. I beat the disease. I beat the assassins. I beat the cliff. He leaned into my hand, closing his eyes, tears still escaping from beneath his lashes. Promise me, he whispered desperately. Promise me you will never step off a cliff again, even if you have wings. I promise, I murmured softly. He exhaled a shuddering breath, wrapping his arms tighter around my waist and pulling me down into a desperate, messy rib-flavored kiss right there in front of the entirely stunned tavern audience. I kissed him back, holding his face in both hands. We were safe. The script was broken. And as the storm raged outside, I realized that my survival plan had worked entirely too well. I had accidentally built a life I actually wanted to live. Chapter 11. Life without a predetermined, tragic expiration date was proving to be remarkably busy. With the Northern Lords permanently subdued, and currently busy filling out the extensive bureaucratic apology forms I had drafted for them, and my lungs completely clear of any glittering, fictional diseases, The estate of Valerius had settled into a new routine. My daily schedule consisted of weightlifting at dawn, balancing the ledgers at noon, and sparring with Silas in the afternoon. Duke Arthur, however, was struggling with the transition. Having spent the first half of our acquaintance ignoring me, and the second half having violent panic attacks about my safety, he was now faced with a terrifying new challenge: traditional courtship. It was going terribly. On Monday, he had sent a servant to my rooms with a bouquet of incredibly rare, breathtakingly expensive winter roses. I had immediately inspected them for aphids, stripped the petals, and sent them to Chef Pierre to be boiled into a high-vitamin syrup. Arthur had found me doing shots of rose water at breakfast and looked deeply defeated. On Wednesday, he had tried gifting me a delicate, diamond-strung necklace. I had pointed out that the chain was a severe choking hazard on the sparring mat, and politely asked if the jeweler could melt the platinum down to reinforce the joints on my squat rack. By Friday, Arthur realized he needed a new strategy. I was in the middle of a rigorous set of lunges in the courtyard, sweating through my linen tunic, when Silas cleared his throat. "My lady," the assassin-turned-trainer murmured, stepping back and lowering his focus mitts. "The Duke approaches, and he looks intensely determined." I stood up, wiping my brow with a towel. Arthur was indeed marching across the cobblestones. He wasn't wearing his usual severe, diplomatic coats. He was dressed in tailored black leather and dark wool, looking broad-shouldered, rugged, and ridiculously handsome. He was flanked by two nervous-looking royal guards carrying a long, heavy-looking wooden crate. "Arthur," I panted, tossing the towel aside. "Good afternoon. Are we doing a perimeter check? Because I noticed the hinges on the west gate are squeaking, which is a tactical liability." "The hinges are fine, Evangeline," Arthur said, stopping a few feet away. He took a deep breath. His hands were clasped behind his back, and his ears were slightly pink. "I have come to a realization." "Oh? Did you finally read my proposal on crop rotation?" "No. Yes. But that is not why I am here." He gestured for the guards to set the heavy wooden crate down on a nearby stone bench. They did so hastily, bowed, and practically sprinted away, leaving us alone with Silas, who tactfully turned his back and pretended to inspect a stone wall. Arthur stepped closer. He looked down at me, his icy blue eyes entirely thawed, swirling with a mixture of profound affection and sheer nervous energy. "Evangeline," he began, his voice dropping into that smooth, rich timbre that usually made my knees feel slightly wobbly. "When we were first engaged, I saw you as a fragile thing, a glass doll waiting to shatter. I thought my duty was to stay away, to let you fade in peace." He gave a dry, self-deprecating chuckle. "Then you ordered a cauldron of beef stew, tackled me into a koi pond, unionized a bandit camp, and jumped off a cliff. You shattered the glass yourself and built a fortress out of the shards." I smiled, my heart doing a very strange arrhythmic flutter against my ribs. "I do love a good fortress. I have tried to court you properly," Arthur continued, taking a step closer. "But you do not want sonnets, and you try to compost the flowers I buy you. You are entirely impractical to romance, Evangeline." "I prefer the term functionally driven," I corrected gently. "Exactly." Arthur's lips curved into a devastating smile. He turned to the wooden crate and popped the heavy iron latches. "Which is why I commissioned the royal blacksmiths to craft something entirely functional. I told them if the balance was off by even a millimeter, I would have them exiled." He opened the lid. I peeked inside, expecting a new set of iron weights or perhaps some tactical armor. Instead, resting on a bed of crimson velvet, was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. It was a broadsword. But it wasn't just any broadsword. The blade was forged from deep, gunmetal-gray Damascus steel, folded to perfection and shimmering in the sunlight. The hilt was wrapped in sweat-wicking, dark dragon leather for optimal grip, and nestled right in the center of the heavy pommel, perfectly positioned to crush an enemy's skull if necessary, was a massive, flawless, brilliant-cut diamond. "Arthur," I breathed, my eyes wide. I reached out and carefully lifted the weapon. It was incredibly heavy, yet the balance was absolutely supernatural. It felt like an extension of my arm. "The blade is infused with a rust-resistant alloy," Arthur explained rapidly, stepping up behind me, clearly anxious about my reaction. "The crossguard is reinforced to block a heavy axe swing. And the diamond, well, I figured if I was going to offer you a ring, you would simply complain that it interfered with your deadlifts. This seemed more appropriate." I stared at the weapon. I looked at the diamond glinting aggressively in the afternoon sun. I thought about the sheer amount of thought, care, and slightly unhinged devotion it took to look at a woman and decide that a bedazzled weapon of war was the ultimate symbol of love. For the first time since transmigrating into this body, the blood rushed away from my head. My knees actually buckled. "Evangeline!" Arthur gasped, his arms shooting out to catch me before I hit the cobblestones. He pulled me flush against his chest, panic instantly flooding his features. "Are you unwell? Is it the disease? Silas, fetch the physician." "No, no," I wheezed, leaning my head against his shoulder, clutching the broadsword tightly to my chest. I looked up at him, a massive foolish grin spreading across my face. "I'm not dying. I'm just swooning." Arthur froze. "You are swooning? It's a very romantic sword, Arthur." I laughed, dropping the weapon safely onto the velvet crate and throwing both my arms around his neck. "It's the most romantic thing anyone has ever given me." "Yes. Of course yes." Arthur let out a breath that sounded like a cross between a laugh and a sob. He wrapped his arms tightly around my waist, lifting me completely off the ground and spinning me around the courtyard. "Thank the gods," he murmured, burying his face in my neck as he set me down, his lips brushing against my pulse point. "I was terrified you were going to ask for the diamond's resale value to fund a new silo." "Oh, don't be ridiculous," I whispered, pulling back just enough to kiss him fiercely. "I'm going to use it to tenderize our steaks." Chapter 12. The Royal Cathedral of Valerius was an architectural masterpiece of vaulted ceilings, stained glass, and echoing acoustics. It was currently packed to the rafters with the kingdom's elite, all of whom had RSVP'd purely out of morbid curiosity. The betting pools in the high society parlors were split evenly. 50% believed I would cough up blood and die at the altar, and the other 50% believed I would punch the archbishop. I intended to disappoint everyone. I stood in the vestibule, adjusting the bodice of my gown. The dress was a stunning cascade of ivory silk and pearl embroidery, maintaining the illusion of a delicate, fairy tale bride. However, I had forced the seamstresses to sew heavy-duty tactical pockets into the underskirts, currently holding 3 protein bars and a small throwing dagger, and beneath the sweeping hem, my feet were laced securely into flat, reinforced leather combat boots. Silas, wearing a tailored suit that barely concealed the sheer amount of weaponry strapped to his body, stood beside me. He was acting as my escort, having successfully negotiated a generous holiday bonus for the role. "Perimeter is secure, my lady," Silas reported, tapping a finger to his ear even though earpieces hadn't been invented yet. He just liked the aesthetic. "Garrick and the reformed bandits are bouncing at the main doors. No unapproved apples have entered the premises." "Excellent work, Silas. Let's get me married." The massive oak doors swung open, and the organ music swelled. As I walked down the aisle, a collective gasp rippled through the congregation. I wasn't gliding like a sickly ghost. I was marching with the grounded, powerful stride of a woman who could deadlift a small horse. Halfway down the aisle, my heavy silk hem caught slightly on an uneven stone. Without missing a beat, I unceremoniously hiked the dress up to my knees to free it, giving the entire aristocracy a clear, unobstructed view of my scuffed combat boots. Lady Seraphina, sitting in the second row, aggressively fanned herself and looked like she might faint. I gave her a cheerful wink. But all the chaos in the room faded the moment I looked at the altar. Duke Arthur stood there, bathed in the colorful light of the stained glass. He wore his formal military uniform, crisp navy wool, gold epaulets, and a chest full of medals. He didn't look icy and he didn't look brooding. He looked like a man who had just won the lottery, and was desperately trying not to shout about it. His blue eyes were locked onto me, wide, bright, and brimming with such overwhelming devotion that it practically knocked the breath out of my highly conditioned lungs. I reached the altar. Arthur immediately took my hands, his thumbs tracing my knuckles. "You look," he whispered, completely ignoring the clearing of the archbishop's throat. "You look like you could conquer a nation. Give me a week and a decent supply line and I just might," I whispered back, grinning. The ceremony proceeded. The archbishop, a nervous, elderly man, read through the traditional Valerius vows, which were incredibly depressing and focused mostly on duty, sorrow, and enduring the winter cold. When it came time for Arthur to speak, he completely ignored the script. "I, Arthur," he said, his voice ringing out clear and steady across the silent cathedral, "take you, Evangeline. I promise to stand by your side in sickness and in health, though mostly in health, given your terrifying cardiovascular stamina. I promise to shield your flanks, to fund your architectural gym renovations, and to never ever try to feed you a tragic narrative again. You are the fire that thawed my life, and I am yours until the end of my days. Somewhere in the back row, Garrick the Bloody blew his nose loudly into a burlap sack. I squeezed Arthur's hands. And I, Evangeline, take you, Arthur. I promise to protect you from assassins, to optimize your daily protein intake, and to love you fiercely and practically. I promise to outlive our enemies just to spite them, and I promise that no matter how many cliffs I jump off, I will always glide back to you. The Archbishop looked utterly bewildered, but he hastily made the sign of the cross and pronounced us husband and wife before we could traumatize him any further. Arthur didn't wait for permission. He pulled me in, dipping me backward in a move that would have snapped the spine of the original Evangeline, and kissed me with a passionate, joyous intensity that made the entire congregation erupt into applause. The reception was legendary. I had fired the traditional caterers and hired a team of butchers. The tables groaned under the weight of whole roasted boars, mountains of garlic mashed potatoes, and vats of thick hearty ale. It was a macronutrient paradise. Finally, the moment arrived to cut the wedding cake. It was a towering 5-tier masterpiece of white icing and spun sugar. A silver serving cart was wheeled to the center of the ballroom. A footman approached, trembling slightly, offering Arthur a delicate, pearl-handled silver cake knife. Arthur looked at the tiny knife. Then he looked at me. I believe, I said, reaching into the voluminous folds of my wedding skirt and pulling out my engagement broadsword. We require a more substantial tool. The crowd backed away nervously. Arthur's eyes lit up with absolute delight. He stepped behind me, wrapping his strong arms around mine, his hands resting over mine on the dragon leather hilt of the greatsword. The massive diamond in the pommel caught the light of the chandeliers. Together, Arthur murmured in my ear, his breath warm. Engage your core, I instructed happily. With a mighty synchronized swing, we brought the Damascus steel down. The blade cleaved through all 5 tiers of the cake in one smooth, devastating motion, cleanly slicing through the cake board and leaving a dent in the silver cart beneath it. Frosting flew. The crowd cheered. Arthur threw his head back and laughed, a rich, booming sound that completely banished the last lingering shadow of the icy duke he was supposed to be. He picked up a massive chunk of ruined, mashed cake with his bare fingers and fed it to me. It tasted like vanilla, victory, and the absolute destruction of a tragic plotline. To a long life, Duchess, he toasted, pressing a frosting sweet kiss to my forehead. To forever, your grace, I replied, grabbing my broadsword. Now let's go hit the dance floor. I need to burn off these carbohydrates. Epilogue. 60 years is a remarkably long time to live when your original life expectancy was roughly 4 chapters. The Valerius estate had seen a lot of changes over the decades. The brooding, Gothic architecture had been extensively remodeled to allow for better cross-ventilation. The dungeon had been converted into a massive state-of-the-art indoor training facility, and the famously tragic Rose Pavilion was now a highly functional greenhouse where Chef Pierre III grew organic spinach. I was sitting on the wide sunlit veranda, 82 years old and perfectly content. My hair was stark white and pulled into a sensible braid, and I was comfortably dressed in loose linen trousers and a thick woolen cardigan. I was currently engaged in my morning routine, doing seated resistance band rows and enjoying a cup of hot black tea. The heavy oak doors of the veranda opened, and out stepped Arthur. Time had turned the icy duke into a remarkably distinguished, silver-haired gentleman. He walked with a carved mahogany cane, mostly for style, though he occasionally used it to affectionately hook me around the waist when he thought I was doing too much cardio. Evangeline, he sighed, easing his tall frame into the plush armchair beside mine. He set a stack of ledgers on the table between us. Our youngest grandson just challenged the captain of the guard to a wrestling match. In the mud. Good for him, I said, completing a set of 12 rows and letting the band snap back. Core strength is vital for the youth. Did he win? It was a draw, mostly because I ordered them both to take a bath before they ruined the courtyard flagstones, Arthur grumbled, though his blue eyes sparkled with fond amusement. He reached over and poured himself a cup of tea. The boy is a menace. He has entirely too much of your energy. He has your stubbornness, I countered, reaching for a blueberry scone. By the way, I read the morning courier reports. The last remaining descendant of the Northern Lords has officially retired and opened a bakery. Arthur chuckled, a warm, gravelly sound that I still love just as much as I had on our wedding day. We outlasted them all, my love. We outlasted the assassins, the political rivals, and the critics. We even outlasted Serafina, I pointed out. Though, to be fair, she moved to the coast to avoid us and took up aggressive needlepoint. A comfortable, golden silence settled over us. It was the kind of peace that came from decades of hard-fought, stubbornly protected happiness. We had lived a life entirely off script. There were no tragic misunderstandings, no weeping in the rain, and absolutely no romanticized illnesses. Just a partnership built on mutual respect, protein synthesis, and the occasional synchronized sword fight. Suddenly, a stray beam of morning sunlight caught something floating in the air between us. It was a tiny glittering speck of dust. It shimmered with an eerie iridescent light, the exact description of the fictional crystal lung disease that was supposed to have killed me 62 years ago. It drifted slowly toward my teacup, a lingering, stubborn ghost of the novel's original plotline, making one final pathetic attempt to assert its tragic narrative. I didn't panic. I didn't cough. I simply raised my hand and swatted it out of the air like a mildly annoying mosquito. Arthur watched the speck of dust vanish into nothingness. He looked at my wrinkled, strong hand and then up to my face. The fierce, absolute devotion that had anchored us for over half a century burned just as brightly in his eyes now as it had the day I tackled him into the koi pond. He reached out and covered my hand with his own. His skin was warm and familiar. "What was that?" he asked softly. "Nothing," I smiled, turning my hand to interlock my fingers with his. "Just a plot hole. So, are we doing light yoga this afternoon? Or did you want to practice your parries?" Arthur smiled back, leaning over to press a gentle kiss to my gray hair. "Whatever you wish, my wildly inappropriate Duchess. After all, we have all the time in the world."